MBB.com is here in New Orleans. Of course, also one of the analysts for Baylor men's basketball, but does a lot of work in covering the Baylor football team as well. Let's start with that game to try to get to 12 wins for the first time ever. And Dave Aranda with what he's like reincarnated himself within a year.
I don't want to say I guess I am kind of shocked. I mean, after a 2-7 season last year, I kind of had pegged this team as a 7-5, 8-4 kind of team. I thought people would be really excited about, and now it's just surpassed, all expectations. I told someone last night, I met a friend in town from Ole Miss, and he goes, "How good is Baylor?" And I said, Baylor's one of those teams you got to watch every week to really, really appreciate. If you watch them one time and they go out and beat someone 21-14 or something, you're thinking, that's decent. But when they start winning these close games week after week and start playing and continue to play sound football, real low on the penalties and turnovers and I think overall though it's just the culture. We talk about the Baylor basketball team and the culture they have and how everyone kind of feeds off of it and gets on the same page. I really just sense watching this football team that it's the same thing with these guys. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons for their success is that it's just the energy that you can sense when you watch them.
You know what I think I've been most impressed with, and it's kind of a different thing, but similar in the same realm as when they had the run with Browse and it was sustainable. It was because they just ran past you. They didn't necessarily physically beat you up. They just were it was a track meet all the time. This team is on the other end of that spectrum in that they're not necessarily going to track meet you all the time, but it's a wrestling match and you are going to get pummeled. Like physically dominated from beginning to end is their kind of MO.
Absolutely. And I think, for a while, what Browse was doing was kind of the hip thing to do. I mean, everyone was trying to emulate it. I mean, everyone was talking about the Big 12 and their high-powered offenses, and Browse teams were better at it than anyone. They were just really freaking good and fun to watch, and those are some of my favorite years ever of Baylor sports. But this has a different feel to it, but it's equally it's kind of like when you go to a baseball game. Sure, it's fun to go see a team hit 10 home runs and the scores 18-14. That's kind of entertaining, but when you go a lot, you really learn to appreciate the pitchers' duels. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that negatively at all, but to me, that's kind of how I feel about this Baylor football team is you really appreciate them when you follow the team religiously and you know about what they've been through and you know what kind of coach Rand is, what his philosophies are. I mean, I think that it's just a different feel, but equally as satisfying.
How impressed have you been by the way Aranda has grown and gotten more comfortable in his role compared to last year when, given the circumstances, anybody probably would have been weird, but his personality combined with those circumstances made it just sort of strange in a way. But he seems to know who he is and what he's about right now.
I think all of us, when he first came, everyone was impressed with the hire, thought it was a good move. But from the media standpoint, we were kind of like, oh, man, these are going to kind of be some boring press conferences. I remember those first Zoom calls they were having when they were in quarantine. I was like, oh, my gosh. But now he's kind of become a character, hadn't he? I mean, he hadn't really changed his delivery or anything, but he's kind of become, a character. And he's so insightful, and the things that he says off the top of his head have so much depth and perspective to him. It's amazing how deep he is. It was funny. I was in my hotel down the road. There was 2 people in the hotel gym yesterday, me and Dave Aranda.
Oh, wow.
Is that right?
Never spoke to him. That never bothered him. I just let him do his thing. He was on that treadmill the whole time I was in there. It was probably about an hour, 45 minutes. I was kind of watching out the corner. He never changed his pace, never went slower, never went faster, just stayed on that thing.
Yeah,
just stayed kind of like how he is. He just stays the same the whole time, and he had a nice little workout.
It is kind of odd, and this can maybe help us transition to basketball, but I've never met a coach in any sport that's like Scott Drew. I've never met anybody who has his personality that's legit, their personality. Like some people will put on that mask, and they're not. Scott's legit. I've never met a football coach, any football coach anywhere, that's like Dave Aranda.
Not at all. I mean, I definitely have been around some stoic guys that are kind of boring, but I don't find him boring anymore. No. I look forward to his press conferences. Before I did I was like, oh, we've got to transcribe all this, and we got to search for a needle in a haystack where there's a good quote that's not cliche. But now it's just the opposite. And
it's something that I had to learn him. I had to learn him, and I think he's learned himself as well. All right.
Dave, one thing I heard you say when I was just sitting over there listening is like it's kind of you've enjoyed watching him grow, even though he's only been here 2 years. But just watching him mature and kind of figure himself out a little bit as a head coach and maybe make some mistakes and get better. I said that about Scott Drew all the time. There were so many moments early in his career where you're like, what is he doing? And with Aranda, I'm not so much talking about an X's and O's thing, but just but with Drew, we were like, what's he doing? Is he a good coach? Is he not? But it's like they've got to learn too. They've got to grow too, and just like players do when these guys become first-year head coaches, and we've watched that happen with Aranda.
So I don't think anyone thought that Baylor and especially Iowa State would be unbeaten as they meet tomorrow in Ames to start the Big 12 conference. But Baylor obviously has looked really good despite some youth and infusion. And Iowa State, my Lord, why are they who they are right now?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, are they really that good? I still haven't completely bought in, but their coach, TJ Altsberger, has done a great job with transfers, and a couple of young guys. And there's only like 2 or 3 guys on that team this year that were even there last. Good coach, court advantage. I still don't know if they're a top 4 or 5 team in the league. I think maybe top 5, but we'll see. We'll see tomorrow. I mean, I think that's a big test for them. Big test for Baylor. The home court advantage in the Big 12 at so many schools is strong, and Iowa State has one of the best ones. Now luckily a lot of these Baylor guys that have been here 2-3 years, even during the COVID year before that, Matthew Meyer, those kind of guys, they've played in those situations. But you wonder, you hope an LJ Cryer, you hope Kendall Brown and Sohan will handle it well. But if they do, I think Baylor should win the game without question.
I saw a draft ranking during one of the Baylor games that had Kendall Brown as the 19th best player available. And my thought was, this is either the deepest pool of talent that the NBA draft has ever had, or that guy hasn't watched Kendall yet.
Right. That does seem pretty low. I think Kendall's done great so far, but I'll tell you this: I think it's nowhere close to his ceiling. Even his freshman ceiling, I think is still high. He's getting his points, but a lot of those points are on great passes from Akinjo, where he's catching the ball on an alley-oop or for an easy layup on a fast break. So I just think what I like most about Kendall Brown, as far as what he's done this year, is I was legit worried he was going to come in, have his mind on the NBA, was not going to fit into the team culture. Then all of a sudden he becomes a distraction in practice. He hasn't done that. He has completely bought in to the defense that he has to play, to the team culture, to sacrificing points, and it's been huge for this team. And Sohan the same way. Akinjo even more so than any of them. That to me, this is the best. We talked all year last year about the culture, but boy, it's really shining through now with how these guys have just stepped right in and just bought in right off the bat. It speaks to the players that are returning, the players that were there before them.
I think people want it though, don't you guys? I mean, like, people kind of want to be part of something that works.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, well, I do think high profile recruits sometimes they don't care as much about winning. Not obviously talking about Kendall Brown, but that can become an issue. They want to come in and shine. And what they don't realize is the way you shine is to win. You'll look a lot better to scouts if you average 9 points and really become a team player on a good team than if you average 18 on a 10 and 20 team. They don't look. There's this huge mistake that all scouts look at as stats and stuff. Man, that's not it. They look at the complete package.
When James Akinjo announced his transfer, I remember there was a big deal about that at the time, and I don't follow it as closely as you guys do, but I remember you guys were like, hey, he's a really good player. But has he been better than you expected or about what you expected?
Better just in terms of the things we just talked about, because I that was the one I worried about more than anything. Even when I went to the Bahamas, there was some guys there from Syracuse, some writers who had covered him when he played at Georgetown, and I was saying how good he's been. They were like, he's not very good. He's a ball hog. He's selfish. He's got an attitude, and that's what he was known for at Arizona a little bit. I mean, just that it was kind of all about him, or at least he played that way. I'm not saying talking about his character, but he was just, kind of a guy that wanted to shoot at the time. But man, I think the way he's bought in has been the key to this team. I mean, and I don't sit there and compare people. Oh, he's not as good as Butler. He's not as good. I don't care. Like he is who he is. Like those guys are great, but this guy's doing really good things for this team on both ends of the floor and in the locker room.
He has had to be reined in a little bit. There are times when you see almost what we saw with Matthew Meyer for a while, and it's a different type player, but at times you kind of see a little bit too much, but it was almost like
there's that thing we didn't want to see, and it comes just for a minute.
But they have been able. He's not like pushing away. The way that coaching staff handles players is why he is getting better and right in front of us as well.
Absolutely.
As a team player,
As a team player, and I mean, I'm telling you, that guy is a winner. You can just see it in the way he carries himself, in his eyes, that he's a competitor. I love watching him play, and for the most part, even though sometimes he may shoot it a bit too much, I don't feel like he's taking bad shots. Like, I never think, why'd you shoot that? I mean, for the most part, maybe once a game, I'm like, that's a nice shot. But he's taking good shots. I mean, he's getting good shots. He just doesn't always make them, but I think he's doing fine. I think he's great.
Jason, what do you think? I mean, Scott's always had that great. The goal of the great culture. He hasn't always had teams with great culture. I mean, sometimes you cannot, you can't push it together. I mean, he's always had pretty much that, but like nothing like it has been. What was the turn where it's now just? It's just like the faucet's going, and you can't turn it off of what they have going as far as buying into what Scott Drew and Jerome Tang and Jacobs and all those guys want.
I think it was, maybe having a few bad seeds, 4 or 5 years ago, and then them all of a sudden paying more and more attention in recruiting to, I don't want to say character, because even the bad seeds weren't bad guys. They just weren't good locker room guys. So, but really researching people's backgrounds, looking at their families, paying more attention to how are they going to fit in the locker room. And I think bringing in the Davion Mitchells, Freddie Gillespie, just having guys like the Ish at times was a good leader. Good locker room guys, and I think eventually all those bad pieces just kind of got weeded out. And even if you bring one in that you think might be a bad piece, they have no choice but to adapt or not play. And everyone's that you hardly ever see anyone transfer. Out there. You know what I'm saying? It's like everyone loves it, and people want to win, and there's a good vibe.
And
right
those
now.
who have transferred have kind of just they not disappear, but they
haven't done much.
What's amazing to me about him in the transfer portal is he literally throws a penny in the well and takes out $1. I mean, if somebody leaves, okay, like Deuce Bello, we never heard from him again. But all of a sudden, he goes in a little magical transfer portal and pulls out, someone, like Davion Mitchell, maybe the most dominant player in Baylor basketball history.
And the kid, maybe they don't get Davion Mitchell if the Tyler Harris kid had come to Baylor instead of Memphis, then he kind of struggled to find his place. So I mean, it's crazy how things unfolded, and obviously the story with Jared Butler. I'll never forget. About 3 years ago, I was walking out of the Farrell Center, and there was a group of recruits walking out ahead of me. There's like 3 kids, basketball players, high school kids. I didn't know who they were, but I just was eavesdropping, and they were like, "Man, I loved it here. God, that was fun." And this one guy goes, "Man, and that staff. God, I love that staff. Those guys are so." And they were using certain words, but like the kids taught. But they were just raving about the staff, and no names, no Scott Drew, no Jerome. It was just the staff. And I think a lot of they have great chemistry on that staff.
Yeah, they do, and they're not afraid to go at each other on occasion.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. I love it. I love it, and that plays a key role, man. It does.
What did you think about Chris Beard's comments the other day? They got a lot of people riled up about, the Big 12 going through Lawrence and all of that.
I think that was a calculated remark.
You do.
It's funny because, he and Drew have the same agent. It's crazy, But, I think that was kind of, and Beard and Self are their boys, which is fine. I mean, Self's one. I know Self real well. I think he's awesome. But, that was calculated. That was a little jab. But, I mean, there's plenty of things you could jab right back, like his record against Scott Drew is 2 6th-place finishes in a row in the league. So,
but he won't go there. And you know what? They might behind the scenes, but they'll just be saying that, hey, I saw where Texas had a bunch of champagne bottles ordered for the.
They might.
They might do. I think they have a way of subtly putting up bulletin board material.
I can always tell, just because I've been around it so long, I can tell when coaches are taking jabs. Like when Baylor beat Kansas 1 year. So it's like, well, what Baylor really did good, they just made shots. That just means, they're really good at making shots. That's like a huge slap in the face. They're saying they took a bunch of dumb shots that we were guarding them on. They just made them for once. And then Beard is like, what Baylor does really good, they're really good at one-on-one basketball. He said that last. That's a huge jab. And then I turn on the game the next night, and he's got his little point guard, the Georgetown Matt McClung or whatever. He's out there shooting shots with 3 guys, and it's what's that? You're playing more one-on-one ball than anyone. So,
hey man, good to see you. Enjoy the night, the weekend, and see you tomorrow.
All right, guys.
Jason King, SicEm365.com on many things Baylor football, men's basketball. Men's basketball, it aims against Iowa State, 2 unbeaten top 10 teams. Baylor defending national champions, number 1 against Iowa State, and then the game tomorrow night, Sugar Bowl and Ole Miss in Baylor.